right, welcome to another episode of Inside the Comedy Institute. As always, it's my pleasure to talk about the craft of comedy, the journey of comedy, and it's different, a little different for everybody. And this is an episode that I think is incredibly important because I have with us here today Tom Sims, a great comedian, but also a guy who went into club ownership and is now the owner and booker of the Stir Crazy Comedy Club in Glendale, which is right outside of Phoenix, Arizona. And I think it's important because, we never really get to know, we're just fishing, we're always trying to just get to the booker and somehow impress him and make him want to do this. And so I think it's so important to hear it. And I'm sure it was a revelation for you too, having been on the other side trying to get booked and all of a sudden being on the side of being the booker. But Tom Sims, thank you very much for joining me here today.
Sure, man. You bet.
Now, how long did you do stand-up for before you decided to start a club?
Probably like 8 years, I think, something like that.
About 8 years. And here's and was it your very first show that I was the headliner on? Was that your first show or like one of your first shows?
No, it was early on, but it wasn't my first show.
Oh, okay. 8 years. And so it wasn't that long ago, and my career's clearly been stalled ever since. So
I was probably 12 years ago. The club's been open 3.5 years.
Oh, okay. There you go. Now I saw you as a comic. I saw your growth from being a very relatively newbie to being a feature act. I don't know that I ever saw you break into the headliner ranks before you went into the club business.
No.
So what made you want to make the transition? What happened with you and stand-up versus you doing the club? Because like now that you're in the club, you really don't do stand-up anymore.
No. I don't know. I started, producing my own shows around town, and I found that I enjoyed doing that more than performing. And I become, I'm kind of, I don't know if I'm really into the customer experience and the psychology of a customer, and combining that with specifically with a comedy environment. I find that all very fascinating, and this was a way for me to sort of put all of my little crazy ideas into something. When you
saw the comedy
shows,
club experience and you were like, I can do this better.
Yeah. That's kind of a ballsy way of saying it, but yeah, sort of. There's a lot of things that any comic that has been doing it for a while, comics know certain things, lower ceilings, keep people together, all of that kind of stuff. But then there's a lot more to maybe some finer details that may not be so apparent. And all I did was take all of these ideas and executed them. When you're producing your own shows, you have the limitations of the room. Maybe the bar won't turn off the TVs or whatever it might be. You kind of have to play the cards you're dealt.
What a sweet example, boy. Oh, we've run into that. Oy.
Sure. So this was just a way for me to just put it all together and try to execute. And that's, that was the idea behind the club specifically. I didn't want to own a club just to for the sake of owning a club. I wanted to specifically put all of these in practice.
It does seem like a lot of times when the comedian goes into the ownership role, it's almost so they can book themselves quite a bit.
Sure.
And that does not seem to be the case with you.
No, it wasn't for that. I mean, I was getting as much stage time as I wanted. It was truly just because I really got into the atmosphere, the customer experience, all of that, and it was just a way to do that.
If you had to pick something, all these little things that you implemented, what one or two of them do you think really made a difference in terms of the experience that you're talking about?
Well, I think a lot of them, the any of the great clubs or the good clubs, even it's pretty common, it's keeping people close together. It's the low ceilings. It's the, it's, I guess to boil it down, it's distraction is the enemy of comedy. So I obsessed with how can we eliminate any distraction
Yeah.
at all, and that was manifest in the menu choices, the lighting choices, the size of my tables, the way the room is set up. All of those things, just at the end of the day, were to minimize any distractions.
Yeah.
And I'm, it's something that I'm always messing with. Even 3.5 years into it, I'm still in there doing things to the room and making changes and tweaks, how we do stuff and processes and all of that stuff. And it's how you train your staff and all of that. It's just all of these little crazy, and you know me for a while, you know how obsessive I am with
Oh,
little
completely.
things sometimes. But so this is my playground, and that's what I'm trying to do, though. And I still get a kick out of, when a headliner who may not know me that well personally, if at all, when they come and they're really excited about the room and they see all of this stuff and they're like, check drop, stuff like that. I really get a kick out of that. Like, yes, this is what I wanted. This is the approval that I wanted. I wanted comics to really love the room.
It's so funny you just mentioned that, and I don't think I probably noticed it in the moment, but now that I think about it, there was no major disturbing check drop at the end of the headliner set, which is one of the most annoying things you have to deal with. And in fact, I used to always just tell a story. The checks would come out. I'd be like, okay, the checks are coming out. So I know you're going to have to focus on your checks. So I'm just going to tell a story. And I would just do this, 4 or 5 minute story so that they could, get the checks done. And
Sure.
I wouldn't need that much interaction from them. I was doing just a narrative.
Sure.
And now that I think about it, you're right, that doesn't happen at your show. I just played your club. It was spectacular as always. But I mean, it's so funny now that you mentioned it. That's true. It was a seamless ride from the very beginning to the very end.
Yeah. And that's one of the big things. I mean, obviously, there's no headliner ever that likes the check drop. So, but I mean, I get it. I understand why clubs do, there is a payroll cost to extending your time. And if you're not somebody who's ever been on stage and you don't know that feeling, you might not appreciate how much more improved the show is going to be without it. So we had to figure out, sort of the process to make that happen. And we did it, and that's a big, it's a big thing, and the audience doesn't know that. They're not going to leave going, wow, it was really great how they didn't drop the checks. They're not going to notice that. But hopefully they're going to leave and they're going to have a much better experience unbeknownst to them, because the checks weren't dropped and the headliner wasn't interrupted. Now there's some other challenges that we have to deal with to make that happen. But that's a big one.
That is a big one. And then the other thing was one that I remember when you first even, we broached the idea of you opening a club. You told me about it. And one of the things I said was, I just really wish clubs would do away with the 2-drink minimum. I think it's a turnoff to people these days. This idea that they're forced to order 2 drinks. And initially, I know you didn't have the 2-drink minimum. Do you still not have it?
No, we never have. And again, that's something that, most clubs do. And I get why they do it. You got to make money. You can't have somebody come in and drink water. I mean, you got to make revenue. But what I wanted to do with my club is I really wanted to cultivate an audience. I don't want, we don't paper the room. We don't give out tickets. We charge for every ticket. Because I don't want people to come to the show because they got free tickets. I want them to come to the show because they want to see comedy.
Yeah.
And that's just a better audience, better for the comics. So that was always the plan. And the flip side of that is, I'm not going to make you buy any drinks or food. If you buy a ticket, sell you drinks or food if you want it. But I felt that, and when you're doing a papered room, you can feel it,
Yeah, absolutely. They don't
sometimes they're
care about the
animals.
show. They take it for granted.
Yeah.
They're like, whatever, who cares? You didn't even, no one even paid for this anyway.
Right, right. So that was the thought behind it. And for the most part, people are going to order two things anyway. But
That was
even if they
always
don't,
my feeling. It's like going to the movies, and especially if you take that away, then you can always charge a ticket,
yeah,
because then people feel like, well, at least I could just buy a ticket and I don't feel the pressure. But much like going to the movies, I feel like always felt like people would be like, they're going to buy it anyway. They're there, they're going to buy some, and like for the
yeah,
person that buys one thing, there's definitely going to be the person that buys three things.
sure, yeah. And for the most part, like I said, we do get the occasional water drinkers, but the servers aren't happy about it. But they paid to get in, and that's all I wanted from them. So that was the idea. And then, since most comedy clubs do have two drink or item minimums, when I am asked by a customer if we do that and we say we don't, I mean, it's like a big deal. They're like, oh my God, that's
Right?
great. So it's like a
The
sales
relief
pitch
must be
almost.
fantastic.
Yeah. People don't want to be told what to do, and it was,
Yeah.
and it puts the servers in an awkward situation where you have to tell someone, well, you didn't get two things, and now that's a weird scenario. And
Yeah, it's like, so
and
it's on
you
there. Do you want the waters? Because I had to charge you for something. And
yeah,
yeah,
I don't want, it's just, I don't want that. I just don't feel like I have to squeeze everybody for every dollar,
yeah.
and like I said, most people get a thing or two, so we're fine.
Yeah, and I just always felt like that was such an old paradigm from when people were, before they papered rooms, and it was so popular that people were paying covers, and you just wanted to make sure, and you could easily say the two drink thing. And now, I think they've had to paper rooms because people know they're going to have to buy two items,
Hmm.
and so they know that they really are paying a cover charge of X number 20, $24 anyway.
Right.
And I think it's a turnoff. I think that's why we've had to paper rooms in the past. And I
Yeah.
love that. I think that that's the only way back to making sure everybody pays to see the show, which creates inherent value, like you said, versus a papered show, and that's to remove the two drink minimum. I just think it's a very old paradigm. Now, um, what is your biggest booking dilemma? What's the biggest booking dilemma for you?
Too many comics and not enough dates to give them.
Right? And I think that's one of the things we don't realize is you already booked a full year with comics you like, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
now there's some new ones. So what happens?
Well, and when I was, hustling gigs, I didn't appreciate this fact. And I think the biggest thing for comics to realize, and maybe look through this prism when you're trying to figure out a way to get booked, is there are literally thousands of comedians out there. I had no idea until I opened a club how many comics were out there looking for work. So it's just the sheer numbers. It's a numbers game that you're up against. Um, there's only 52 weeks a year, and
Yeah.
those, the first year you get 52 comics. Well, the next year, those 52 comics want to come back. Now,
Yeah.
and now you still have more comics that are coming in. Um, and I kind of separate, I guess, there's the conversations are a little different between liners and the undercard, if you will.
Right.
Um, because with the openers and features, you got all these locals. I'm in Phoenix, and there's probably 1,000 comedians in Phoenix alone,
Yeah.
and they all want work, and
Yeah.
you want to have locals and have that community and all of that stuff. um so it's just that's what you're up against, and that's the biggest hurdle. There's just too many comedians, and it's not just hey, I'm really funny. Well, I'm sure you are, but there's 1,000 other really funny comics too, and they're all trying to get work. It's
Yeah.
it's tough, man. if you're a host, that they've got a million comics there that are trying to get booked, and and the locals don't need hotels and they don't need transportation and all of that stuff, and so I don't know, I'm asked all the time, how do you get booked into clubs and stuff, and it's just really tough, man. uh you know as a headliner, you probably don't want me saying this as advice, but the best thing to do is have a headliner bring you, you know.
No, I tell them that too. That is really the best way to, yeah, because then they get to see you and somebody else brought you and the introductions are kind of made.
Right. And at least I can only speak for myself, but if one of my headliner brings their features in, I'm yeah, okay, fine. I let them do it. So that's the easiest way if you're going to another city. Otherwise, like I said, I've got comic friends here that I can't get to enough, and it makes it awkward, and they think that I'm avoiding them, and it's like, no, I just don't have the room. Um, so it's just a numbers game. You have to do everything right, because it's so uh the analogy that I kind of give sometimes, if like, if you think of a beautiful woman in a bar and she's the only woman in that bar, her standards for guys is going to go up very, very high
Right,
with
right,
the 100 guys that are hitting on her, right?
right.
So a comedy club booker or promoter or owner, you have so many comics that you can choose from that you're going to get really picky, because you can be, and you're going to take very few risks. I don't want to, any comic that I book that I don't know or I haven't seen is a risk for me. Yeah, their video looked great, maybe that was the one time they did great, you don't know.
Right,
So it's just a
right.
risk that, and especially, when you're the club owner, it's different if you're just the booker. You don't have the same stresses that the owner does. So when the owner is the booker, I think we're probably a lot less open to risk, because we're the ones that have to deal with upset customers or customers that didn't have a good time or whatever. So my risk is probably a lot less than a booker who's just putting comics into rooms because they're not there on that Saturday night when the guy eats it or whatever.
Right, right.
So I'm just very risk averse. Especially with headliners, like very few headliners have I booked that I haven't seen in person. Very, very few. And that one, it's because, okay, I've seen this person, I know what they do. Two, I forgot what number two was. Oh, part of the fun for me is going to Los Angeles or going to Las Vegas and seeing headliners that I haven't seen or worked with before, and going, oh man, I'm gonna book this girl, lady, or whatever.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun. So for a headliner, in Dayton that emails me and says, I'm so and so, and I'd really like to do your room, and I'm sure you're very funny, Mr. or Mrs. Dayton, but I don't have any spots. And there's, all of these comics that I've already had, all these comics that I know I still want to bring to the club. You're just way at the end of the line,
Yeah.
It's just tough to break through, especially, just the sheer number of emails and texts and all of that stuff that I get. And
How
all
many
this
would
is
you,
to say,
sorry, go ahead.
just to say, and this is assumed that they're not doing anything that I'm like, oh, I'm never booking you. That's assuming they've sent the right email with the right content and all of that. Forget about the
Yeah.
ones that send these dumbass emails and say stupid things that you're like, well, no wonder you're not getting booked.
Yeah.
So it's just tough, man. It's just I can't imagine. And now I understand, being on this side of it. You take your time to craft this great email and send it off to Mr. or Mrs. Booker, and man, you didn't even respond. You can't even send me an email. But now I understand from this side why all of that stuff happens.
Yeah. Now let's talk about that email, because as opposed, I mean, you at least want to not hurt your opportunity. You at least want to set the stage that then maybe if you do see him live, you're like, oh, I remember he sent me that good email. I do want to see him. So do you think what do you think should be in that email that you're like, okay, at least if I were to see you, I would take you seriously?
Okay. So I'm going to be totally honest here. And I know that I'm speaking for other bookers and especially club owners. And I don't want to sound like a jerk here, but I'm just trying to be honest, right? So we get contacted a lot of emails. And especially when you're the owner, I'm not just the booker, right? I'm doing a million other things. I did 50 things today that had nothing to do with booking the club. I'm just
Right,
very
right.
busy. So if I can't respond to every email because I don't have time to get into a 3 and 4 email exchange with every comic. So I'm responding all day. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I just,
it
so,
becomes
so
that's your job, is just responding to
exactly.
comments.
I just don't have time for that. That's why bookers don't respond to your emails. It's not because they hate you or don't even want to hear from you. It's because I just don't have time to be responding all day to, a host and a feature and a headliner potentially all day, every day. Right. So I just, I see the email. I see, okay, I see what's going on here, and I delete it. Maybe some of it registers and I think about it, or maybe I don't, or whatever. But I don't respond unless there's something I specifically want to respond to. And because of that is, if you send me an email and there's not enough information in it that, I'm not going to reply asking for information, because I don't want to get back in that exchange.
Mhm.
And I also don't want to lead you on thinking that, hey, a booking is coming here. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
So it's
Oh,
just easier to
he
just
asked me for
delete it.
this. He asked me for that. He must be
Right.
right.
So, and I get emails all the time, and I would say just don't put a bunch of stuff in there that isn't necessary. Keep it bulleted points, stuff that they probably want to know. Like, definitely have some links to YouTube. And I just got an email a few days ago. I clicked on the link, and it wanted to install something on my phone to see
Oh,
the video. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. I
yeah.
don't remember who it was or what it was, but don't do stuff like that, because I'm not installing something on my phone to watch your video.
Right, right, right. You
I'm not
need
going to do that.
shockwave to see this or whatever.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So just send a link to YouTube or whatever, some, just some introductory stuff. And just know that, I saw it, I saw your email. If I didn't respond, if I didn't tell you to not email me anymore, just,
That's a win.
periodically keep it going. Right.
Yeah.
And I will. If somebody's annoying, I'll tell them, look, stop emailing me. There's this guy that emails me constantly. He sends me emails to 2 of my business accounts and my personal account for some reason.
Oh, shit.
And I get him to all, and I'm like, look, stop emailing me. Because and the way I look at it, when an email comes in, all I know is what's in this email, right? Maybe you're a wonderful human being. I don't know. But I figure if you're willing to do that, you're probably going to be a lot to handle in person too. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right, right.
So keep in mind what you put in that email, because that's all they know of you,
Right.
and maybe it's, if you're a little unprofessional sounding, and you might want to read it to somebody to say, hey, does this sound professional? Because I get a lot of emails that are like, telling me how they'll destroy my stage, and I'm missing out all this. It's like, no, I'm not. And no, you won't. So delete. Don't talk like that to
I
people.
know. Well,
So,
and I have to be empathetic here, in that I know that comes from a place of not knowing what to say, and trying to just try and sell you that I'm gonna blow it up. You don't want to, I mean, we don't know what to say. And I think
yeah.
that's the thing, is there is a bit of desperation in that, if you had one shot, one opportunity, like I gotta get you to book me. And I think it's important for them to know that the email generally isn't going to make them book you.
No.
But it may make them take a look. and maybe
Sure.
if they see your name on something. Now, do you go to festivals? Like you said, you come to LA and you go to Las Vegas and stuff. So do you think it is good then for comedians to do festivals and to be out there as much as possible? You know,
100%, 100%. You know, any walk of life, but especially comedy, it's about networking and who you know. Like, look at me, for instance. For the first 2 years, everybody that I booked, I had worked with. I worked with you. I met with you. I met you, you know, and you were one of the first ones that I brought in. It's because we knew each other and I'd worked
yeah,
with you. I mean, it's not where you can't sit at home and complain that you're not getting anything. It's like, well, nobody knows who you are and they're not going to come to your door. Festivals are, I always enjoyed going to festivals when I was still doing comedy. I loved it.
yeah.
And I've booked, you know, I've booked features and I've let people crash at my place and from people that I met, you know, when I was actually doing festivals. Um, so absolutely anything that you're able to do like that, you know, I know it costs money to get to some place and all of that, but you know, like anything else, you got to spend money to make money, but networking is huge. Networking is huge. And I'll tell you a quick funny story. There's a comic out of Chicago who years and years ago, I did a guest spot at a club in Denver, north of Denver. It's not even there anymore. Anyway, he was the headliner. And I was just, you know, some idiot comic doing a 5-minute guest spot on the midnight show. And he was really funny. But he was super nice to me. And I always remembered that. So fast forward 8 years later, I get an email from the club from this comic looking to get booked. He had no idea who I was. He would never even remember that happening.
Yeah.
But I was like, yeah, yeah. And I booked him immediately. And when I picked him up at the airport, I told him who I was and why I booked him so quick and all that. And he was like, yeah, I thought that was a little too easy. But that's what it was. You know,
Yeah.
I met him years ago and he was super cool and he's funny. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to bring him in. But it was just the nature of, you know, the serendipity of, I just met him and he was a nice guy. And also the converse happens where I worked with people that were assholes and now they want to get booked. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to book you. I don't need to book you, you know?
And I think we have
I'm
to
human,
remember
you
that
know?
is that, you pass the same people on the way up that you pass on the way down. I mean, and you just you should be nice to people around you. And I know I was a dick to a lot of people, when I was a younger headliner, and it was something that I kind of had to really kind of learn, like, you know what, it's better to be nice to people because you never know who's going to be able to help you out later.
Yeah, for sure. For
So
sure.
that's now let me ask you this. When you do go out and you're looking at comedians, I mean, and that's the thing, every booker, I mean, what you're seeing is kind of the booker's taste. You're seeing the selections that they've made and put out on display. Now, what turns your head?
um, well, it's kind of a feedback loop, you know. I kind of over the few years, I kind of learned my demographic and what they like, you know. So and I, you know, I don't just book comics that I think are funny. I mean,
See, and that's interesting because I would assume that that's what most bookers do.
and they may, I can just tell you, I don't, this is probably going to sound terrible, but I, I, I don't sit and laugh at most comics. You know, I don't find it funny. And I think, no, and the reason why I say that is because, you know, as a comic, you see where they're going, you see, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
You've
yeah.
seen it, you get it. You're more analyzing it, so you don't sit there and laugh. So if somebody truly makes me laugh, I love it, man. It's like, man, you got through all of that wall. This is great. But, you know, I can tell um when somebody's funny to the general public or to a crowd. I mean, I can see that. I can get it. Like, oh man, this guy's great. It doesn't make me laugh, but oh, it's gonna be great. You know,
Wow.
I'm not talking about, you know, a hack or whatever,
Right.
um, uh, but I can see that. Oh yeah, my audience will really love her. They're gonna love her. You know, so I'll book her. Now, when I get somebody that truly makes me laugh, that's great too. But I don't book for my own sort of, you know, I can't watch anybody in my own club. I can't sit down and enjoy it. I'm worried about so many things that I can't just sit there and quietly enjoy it. I'm
Right.
wondering, what, all this other stuff. So very rarely do I get to sit down and watch it in my own club, and unless there's somebody specific that I want to, see or whatever.
Right.
So I book, I try to keep it a good mix, different styles. And my club is a little cleaner than a lot of comedy clubs. I compare it to LA comics. I kind of compare it to Comedy and Magic Club. I lean a little more that way.
Mhm.
My demographic skews a little older.
Yeah. So
And
does
I
theirs. So
kind
that
of
makes
tend
sense.
to, yeah. So, and that's something that I've learned over the few years of, just kind of seeing what people kind of respond to and stuff. And when I do have a dirtier headliner, I usually get an email or two the next day
Yeah.
saying, they were a little too dirty for us. You know what I mean? So, oh, I'm sorry. I have that conversation. Not a lot,
Yeah.
but it happens.
Yeah.
So I try to mix it up a little bit,
Yeah.
but,
So, I
and
mean,
it's like,
when you get an email from somebody that you already use recommending somebody else, does that in any way make you a little more willing to read that email or to look at those links, or is that just another one in the pile?
it depends on who the best referral you can have is if a comedy club owner refers you to me, like
Ah,
person to person. And it
right.
happens whenever I'm at another club, and I go to a lot of clubs. I love going to other clubs. We talk, owners talk. We vent. You know, we
Yeah.
complain. We bitch. But we always talk about who does well for you. Who do you have that I should know about? That happens all the time. Happens all the time.
Wow.
Positive and negative. They'll be
Yeah.
like, "Hey, you ever work with so and so? They're a pain in the ass." That happens too, you know. So that's the biggest thing. Like if another comedy club owner refers somebody, that has a lot more weight because they have the same weight on their shoulders that I do.
Right.
If a
Right.
comic
Right.
refers me, I take it with a grain of salt because I know we're comics and we try to get our friends stuff so that they get us stuff and all of that. So I take it a little grain of salt. Um, but certain people I have more trust in than others.
That is a revelation. I never, and I actually I have in the past listed club owners that they could reach out to and say, "Hey, listen, you want a recommendation? You can reach out to this club owner, that club owner, this club owner." And I never know if they do or not. But when you hear it from another club owner, that's the best recommendation you can get.
Yeah, for sure. I also, I go to other clubs' websites and just see who's getting booked. Um, and some owners, I talk to a lot more. I know Matt Chavez up at LA Comedy Club. Great dude. I talk to him all the time.
Yeah, he's a good friend as
Um,
well.
yeah. So yeah, absolutely. We talk, we're all in this same sort of situation. So we try to help each other out that way.
That's pretty crazy. Wow. And I feel like a lot of comics are going to hear this and be like, "Oh shit."
Yeah, for
Well,
sure,
don't talk to
man.
this person. Don't talk to that person. That's funny.
Like Comedy Club 2 weeks in a row a couple of weeks ago, and I think I came back, booked 3 headliners from it, that I saw up there for the first time.
Where was this again?
LA Comedy Club.
Oh, at the LA. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. It was a few weeks ago. There was 2 weeks where I went up there for a couple of days each week, and I came back, Ron Jostle, I got him in a couple of weeks. That
Yeah,
was,
he's great. He is great. I got a chance to work with him when I was up there too. And yeah, he's a very talented. Talk about great, solid writing, like punchline dynamic, all of it there. Very funny, very quick hitter. You know,
Well, what's funny about Ron is I had never met him. I wasn't familiar with him at all, and we were hanging out. A bunch of us were hanging out in the green room, and him and I got to know each other in the green room. And I was like, man, I really like this guy. I hope he's funny because I'd like to book him. I hadn't seen him. I hadn't seen him yet.
That must have been
And
quite a
then I saw him.
relief. That must have been quite a
Yeah.
relief when he was actually really good.
Well, yeah. Then I talked to him about a booking. If I didn't think he was funny, I wouldn't have booked him. But
How
yeah,
disappointing
but
would
it
that have
was.
been? It's like getting along with a really hot girl, and you're like, please be good in bed. Please be good in bed. First of all, thank you so much. You shared so much insight that I think is going to be mind blowing to comedians, because these are the things we wonder about. Should I keep saying them? Should I try and like shake them up a little bit? Should I let you know? And I feel like this information is so incredibly, especially the owner to owner recommendation situation. I think that is a mind blowing revelation in terms of something I don't think we think about. In fact, I
Yeah.
think we hope you don't talk.
No, we talk, anytime I talk to another owner, we always discuss comics. Always. For my podcast, I interviewed a few comedy club owners, and as soon as the mic is off, we talk about comic. Do you have so and so? How they do for you? Oh, they did great, or whatever. Uh, every conversation I ever have with another club owner, we always talk about comics.
You realize for me
That's
right now,
always a
I
part of
am
it.
desperate to ask about what's been said about me, and also desperate to not know what's been said about me. I feel like maybe off Zoom another next time I would love to hear some of the things you heard. So I don't know if I wanted to be on part of this podcast, though. I'm afraid you'd tell me something and break my heart and make me quit comedy.
No, just to follow up on your earlier question about emails to club owners and
Yeah.
promoters, though, I would say two things. One, put all the information that they could possibly want from you, videos, your avails, and what you're looking for, what you're looking to do. I get emails
Wow,
all the
that's
time,
another
and
great nugget. What we're looking to
yeah,
do.
they don't say specifically I'm a headline, I'm trying to host. They don't say specifically what you're looking for. Um, and then another trick that I used to do, and being on this side of it, I think it was a really good idea because it helps me. When you're communicating with a club, use the same email chain, especially if you've had a conversation with the booker or the owner, because I deal with lots and lots of comics, and I forget who you are and what we were talking
The
about. And
context, exactly.
totally. So there was clubs that had booked me for years, and it was all the same email chain the whole time. That way, if there was ever any question of, oh, I told you I would do it for this, it's right there. But I'll have a conversation with somebody about something, and then they'll email me a different email, and they'll be like, hey, turns out I can't do that date. I'm like, I don't know who you are,
Which
what we're
date?
talking about
Exactly.
here.
What are we talking about?
Yeah. So
Wow.
I found that to be very helpful, and it's helpful on this side of it too. And then the other thing, and this is more sort of intangible, but just not staying in your lane. Like, I get emails, yeah, I can feature a headline. Well, then you're featuring probably, right? I mean,
Right.
be specific.
Yeah.
I recently had somebody email the club. He had hosted once, a couple, 2 or 3 years ago. I don't even remember when he was there. But he didn't do that well. And recently sent an email asking to headline. And I'm like, what? Are you, I don't know. I didn't even know how to, but it's like, you obviously
You didn't
don't
do well as a
understand.
feature. What makes you think I'm going to upgrade you?
No, he hosted.
Oh,
he hosted,
hosted.
and he didn't do that well. So, and another thing in your emails, don't lie. Don't tell me you're headlining a club and then it turned out you featured the club, which happens frequently enough that I'm bringing it up to you.
Yeah.
Because if I am booking somebody or considering booking somebody that I don't know, I do research. I do look at everything. I try to find everywhere you've been. And more than one time I've found somebody saying that they headline, some club, and then you go to the website and it's like, no, they're featuring. And that, look, man, I'm a human being at the end of the day. I don't want to be lied to, and I'm annoyed that you lied to me, so
Yeah.
it's not going to go well. But yeah, don't lie, and have everything in the email, and don't be offended or insulted if we don't respond. It's not because we don't like you or that we may not book you. It's just that I don't have time to get into it,
Mhm.
So unless I tell you to stop emailing me, don't stop emailing me,
Right. Just don't make it all the time every day.
Yeah, I've got some of those too, where they email me every week.
What do
and
you
it's like,
think is
I've never
appropriate?
responded.
Once every 3 months, once every 6 months? I mean, because this is kind of an annual cycle kind of a thing. So, what do you think is an
Yeah.
appropriate interval?
Um,
And I realize you're thinking to yourself, whatever you say here, people are going to then hit you up at that interval. So I understand that it
yeah.
kind of puts you in that position, and I'm not trying to put you in that position. So just as a general, what would you say is probably enough in general?
Well, it's kind of a weird time right now. And this is one of those, we're getting into the territory. I want to disclaim this as saying this only applies to me, not every booker's
Okay.
different.
Okay.
There's some similarities. We discuss how we book things. Most bookers sit down and we book a big chunk. Like,
Right.
I'm going to sit down for half an hour and I'm going to book 3 months.
Right.
That's usually how I do it. Now, since we're coming out of all the COVID stuff, normally I'm booked up for headliners a year to a year and a half.
Right.
I haven't been because we're just kind of getting started, but I am already out to October now. Features and hosts, I don't go out that far because I always wait. So if you're looking for feature work or hosting work, maybe every couple of months, send your avails. Or if you know specifically you're going to be in town, because I mean, even though I have a ton of locals that I do want to book, I always like to see new talent. So I'm a little more open to a host or a feature. But if you're going to be in town specifically for a weekend, shoot me an email, and if it works out and it looks like you'd be a good fit with my headliner, I'm more apt to do that. I'm a small club, so I don't have a big feature or host budget.
Yeah.
I don't pay for hotels. I'm not the Improv. I don't, so I kind of, it's always weird when a feature from out of town emails me. It's like, man, I think you're hilarious. I'd love to have you, but I feel almost guilty of making you come here for the little money that I pay, So it's just a weird situation. But if somebody's going to be here already on vacation or whatever, I like to try to hook them up when I can, if it's somebody that I really like.
Yeah.
So, point that out if you're going to be, but I know that little trick too. I used to do it myself. Hey, I'm going to be in town this weekend.
Right.
I get
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
But if
Which,
you
I
are
mean,
going
that's
to be out of,
investing in your career. That's the opportunity, trying to create an
sure,
opportunity where then now that becomes an account for you. So, I mean, it is sometimes you got to roll the dice like that. I mean, I believe in that too.
yeah.
Well,
But anyway,
man, great stuff. Great stuff. This is all, I mean, it's enlightening for me, and I've been doing this forever. There are things in there that absolutely are mind blowing, and so I appreciate you taking a little time out of your very busy schedule to do this little Zoom podcast for the Comedy Institute for all my students. I super appreciate it, man. I really
sure,
appreciate
man.
you taking the time here today.
Absolutely. And another subject for another day is how not to lose a gig at a club. Once you get in the door, that's a whole nother subject we could talk about.
Oh,
sometime.
okay. Part two. You heard it here, folks. Part two coming up. How not to lose the gig. Listen, I can tell you how to lose it. I'll tell you. I'll be telling you the how to lose it part, and he will be telling you the how not to lose it part. Deal?
Yeah, that's important. You know, I want to, I honestly want to help comic. I love comics, man. I was a
know you
comic,
do,
and that's
brother.
why I'm doing this. I want you all to be booked all the time. That's what I want. So anything that I've learned, you know, uh, I like to give whatever advice I can from my vantage point. If I can pimp my podcast, it's the business of comedy. You know, we talk about a lot of that stuff that
Yeah.
with the whole premise. It was one day I was talking to Matt Chavez at LA Comedy Club, and we were venting about something. And I actually thought to myself, man, I would love to have just overheard this conversation when I was trying to get booked as a comic. And that was, I should do a podcast where this is what we do. We talk about this stuff, and hopefully comics can listen in and sort of take what they've learned and apply whatever they're doing, you know? So anyway,
Well, that's brilliant. It's called The Business of Stand-Up.
the business of comedy.
The Business of Comedy. And that's available on most of the, you know, the Google Play and Apple
Yeah.
Podcasts, all that business.
Yeah, the business of comedy with Tom Sims. I'll get back to it. I took off. I stopped doing it once the pandemic started. It's just so much other stuff was going on. I will get back to it though. But there's some good stuff out there. I think there's a lot of valuable information for comics that, you know, trying to get booked.
Well, I certainly will tell all of my comics to take a listen, because just judging on what you've given us here today, I'm sure there's a lot more to be heard. And I mean, it really is incredibly valuable information. So thank you very much. I really mean that.
Yeah, man.
You're the best.
Take care, bro.
It's great to see you. Take care, my man. Thank you again.